Now, I say a part of history because
People with no reading comprehension are getting mad at your tweet about BB at the synagogue. Wait, what? What do you mean? You're basing your opinion on a whole religion because of one single place of worship, then you use your huge platform to signal blast justifying anti-Semitism because of it. You're not who I thought you were. You're actually a bad person. Wait, what? You already have been saying I'm an anti-Semitic terrorist, no? Why is he acting like this is a new revelation for him? Very interesting. In any case, my statement on this, here it is. Here, you'll see. Israeli Prime Minister received a hero's welcome at a synagogue in Miami, Florida, as the crowd erupted in applause upon his arrival. To which I said, I've spent the last decade talking about the separation of Zionism and Judaism, and while conceptually it is true, these sorts of images make a much stronger argument against said separation. Then people wonder why anti-Semitism grows. This is a big part of the reason why, which is pretty basic. It's not just my assessment at all. This is what anti-Zionist Jews will openly point to as well when talking about how Israel creates anti-Semites every day. And I think every single person understands what I mean here, that while there is a dangerous conflation between Zionism and Judaism, this conflation is oftentimes marketed pretty much by conservative Jews, Zionist Jews, and Christians, Zionist Christians alike. And it's very frustrating to consistently try to make an argument that tries to spare Jews living in the West when people look to things like this and go, what are you talking about? I'm hearing from Zionist Jewish people that every Jew is a Zionist. Every Jew loves Israel. Why the fuck are you trying to tell me something fake, something phony? Who am I supposed to believe? What people are telling me? What I'm seeing all the time? Or some random fucking Muslim woke guy who's just insincerely trying to be woke? This is the way reactionary politics works. This is the way that right-wingers operate. This is the way the right-wingers operate about, black people, for example. This is the way the white supremacists operate about black people. When you try to explain to them that crime is more often than not a consequence of people's material conditions, they think you're actually defending. They think that you're defending black people falsely. It's much easier to understand that like black people are inherently violent, all this shit, right? And what's really frustrating about that is that it makes my job as someone who combats anti-Semitism much harder as well. And it makes people lean into the likes of Nick Fuentes, who are, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Why is this shit breaking? It makes people like Nick Fuentes' argument much easier. Because it's already much easier to just be like, yeah, Jews control the media, Jews control this, Jews control that, and then present an argument that is anti-Semitic when talking about Israel, right? It's much more difficult to educate people on a true anti-fascist, principled anti-fascist stance, okay? Just in general, right? Much, much easier to do that. And then when it is constantly being reinforced over and over again, this tie is forcibly being presented as the reality to many Americans who are not super educated regardless on Israel, but no longer like Israel. Of course, they're going to learn this wrong lesson. Okay? I know I'm out of focus. I don't know what it's trying to focus in on instead of me. And it's very, very frustrating. It is very frustrating. What? Hassan, you're looking at my Twitter on stream. Would you have said this? I spent the last decade talking about the separation of individual actions and Somali identity, and while conceptually it is true, these sorts of videos make a much stronger argument against that separation, and people wonder why anti-immigrant sentiment grows is a big part of the reason why. Brother, I have literally talked about Jeffrey Epstein in the same exact way, where if you think these two things are equivalent, you're delusional. Okay? Do you not understand the main difference here? Do you not understand the main difference here? If I were to run around and say, this is how all Jews are when talking about Jeffrey Epstein, I would be doing what people are doing about all Somalis. Okay? This argument is quite literally the opposite. I'm saying that all Jews are not monolithic. No group is monolithic. Okay? But for the average person, they do not have the capacity to comprehend such things, especially when people like yourself, Harley, are consistently defending the idea that Israel is a salvageable thing. You live in the West, you don't live in Israel, and you consistently defend Israel. You say people who are criticizing Israel are anti-Semitic. You consistently conflate Zionism with Judaism over and over and over again. You're teaching people to be anti-Semitic. If you spent more time in here instead of just like constantly fucking chirping about me, you would have actually understood my position a long time ago. Okay? What I always say is Judaism has been around for a lot longer than Zionism has, right? Zionism is like maximum, 100 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. Israel's been around for 78 to 80, right? And yet, in the last 80 years, Zionism has overcome Judaism as for many secular Jews too, especially, has overcome the actual religious principle and turned into this like civic nationalist religion that revolves around ethno-religious supremacist values and an exterminationist principle against those who were living there prior to the people without a land going to a land without a people, even though there were people there. So when you have people like Jake Tapper, for example, also defending Israel on the conditions of Jews have to have an ethno-state, Jews have to have an ethno-state, it's ridiculous. And then you have Nick Fuentes also saying the same thing, but in a negative way. People are not going to come to someone like myself and listen to my perspective on this. They're going to keep hearing it over and over again. They keep hearing the false conflation from people like yourself. They keep hearing this false conflation from people like Jake Tapper. They keep hearing this false conflation from every outlet in the media, both pro-Israel and anti-Israel. So what are they supposed to think? That's it. And it's really interesting because as a Muslim living in the Western world, I have a unique perspective on this, one that I've actually talked about, one that I've written about extensively, one that I gave a speech on specifically at Oxford Union. If you want to understand my position, genuinely, if you are actually just not saying this to come across like a reasonable person while you're trying to disparage me or something, go watch that. Okay? You're basing your opinion on a whole religion? I'm not. As a matter of fact, if you had the reading comprehension here, you would understand that that's the opposite of what I'm saying. Instead of rage tweeting and sitting in this chat, you should perhaps try to comprehend what I'm saying here and not just act as though you are charitable to my position on the internet to, try to win over some people or try to win like this silly argument, which you're not going to win anyway. Okay? Just think about it. Instead of tweeting, just try to understand what I'm saying. Okay? You're basing your whole opinion on a religion because of one single place of worship, then you use your huge platform. I think he makes a valid point. Why is the brutal Zionist regime so popular among Jews? Have you ever taken the time to research that exact question? This is not something that I want to happen. This is something that I have worked, as I'm saying here, against happening over and over again. But when you say you're Jewish and you defend Israel and you think Israel is defensible when it's conducting a genocide and you say it's not a genocide, okay? What do you expect people to learn from that? when they hear that over and over again, when a random person who already has anti-Semitic tendencies, as most people do, right? I think you and I would agree on this. This is not like a, crazy position. A lot of people will say like, oh, there are a lot of Jews in Hollywood. Isn't that strange? There are a lot of Jews in finance. Isn't that strange? Like those sorts of attitudes have always existed, right? The nascent anti-Semitism, it can be dangerous if all of a sudden people have a negative perspective, but it's a thing that has been talked about over and over again, but not oftentimes discussed, right? When you already have a lot of people, especially living in a fairly segregated society where they might not live around any Jewish people at all, and they have these sorts of attitudes, and then they hear over and over again that every Jewish person cares about Israel. So if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And then you advance silly, faulty numbers like 90% of Jews are Zionist over and over again. You're teaching people that Jews care about Israel a lot. Okay? Now, the extent of that care is up to question. Obviously, it's a very vague observation. What does that mean? That Israel is important to you as a Jew? Because that's the poll that people point to. That was a question that they asked in that poll. But having said that, when you say that over and over again, what do you think people are going to learn from that? What do you think people are going to learn from that? They're going to think, okay, yeah, all right, Jews care about Israel. That's what they're going to think. The difference now, however, as opposed to the last 50 years, is that now Israel is seen as a negative. Okay, now Israel is known as a state causing terror, which is the truth for the record. It is the truth. Israel is a terrorist entity. Israel is a state, a vassal state of the United States of America that is causing a metric ton of terror in the region. Okay? According to you, you just made a couple of claims just now about my stance that aren't true, but I understand you're in your flow state and I won't hold it against you. According to you, China is just a normal country, but Israel gets all your attention. What should people take away from that? I mean, this is something that I've talked about quite extensively, but I think you might hear it for the first time ever. But here it is. China's operation in Xinjiang, okay, in terms of dragnets, mass surveillance, and re-education camps was completely unjustifiable. I've talked about this extensively. You'll never hear it in clips, obviously, because it doesn't favor people's arguments that I'm a China dick rider who never criticizes China. But if Israel operated in the same way that China operated in Xinjiang, in both Gaza and the West Bank, where every single Palestinian had equal rights in the aftermath of this re-education and whatnot, the rest of the Western world would consider Israel to be the most peaceful nation of all time. As a matter of fact, people such as yourself and numerous others still consistently refuse to recognize that Israel has conducted a genocide, that Israel has always had an ethnic cleansing goal in mind from the beginning, that the inception of the nation state started with the Nakba in 1948, and even before 1948, obviously. This is the problem. Also, we're not even talking about China right now. We're talking about Israel. I held this on to a higher standard. I don't go off of every streamer that says some bullshit. There isn't enough time in the day. Also, tweet mentioning equals cyber stalking. Language and words are important these days. People like yourself have to stop fucking them up. I've had personal conversations with Harley back in the day too, which makes this even crazier because I know his newfound allegiances with certain people that he knew were Nazis makes things even stranger in this regard. Finding yourself aligned with the likes of Sam Hyde after openly stating that you know that they're Nazis, while simultaneously consistently talking about someone like myself that you know has spent a good deal of time and still consistently does so in combating anti-Semitism, shows me that your highest priority is simply trying to defend Israel at a time when, unfortunately for you, it's utterly indefensible. Okay? Well, you got the United Nations, you got plenty of Israeli and Jewish academics who openly recognize it as genocide. It's over. It's done. And despite the consistent propaganda in the Western world through Western mainstream resources, even Americans are recognizing that Israel's doing a genocide. So the more you consistently try and defend this, the worse it'll look for you. Not only is it shameful to defend genocide, but you also are making the world a less safe space for anti-Zionist Jews and all Jews alike by consistently putting up a front where you claim you're like doing this because Jews have to exist in Israel. Jews have to have Israel exist in the way that it does, the violent ways that it does, where even the notion of giving equal rights and equal representation to non-Jews in Israel is actually a serious demographic problem. That's an ethno-state, brother. That's fascism. I'm an anti-fascist. It doesn't matter if it's the fucking German folk doing the fascism, and it doesn't matter if it's Itamar Ben-Gvir or even someone such as yourself doing the fascist argumentation. What a horrible days to have eyes and have... I have Syrian, Tunisian, and Moroccan Jewish friends in Montreal, and they cannot go where their grandparents grew up. The Nakba went both ways. Oh, my Lord. Sure, bud. Well, don't worry. Israel's taking up pieces of Syria, too, now. So maybe they can go to Israeli-conquered territory in Syria if you think that that is a serious consideration. Is there ever a moment where you consider the actual victims here when we're talking about it? Or is it always that you and your friends living in fucking Canada that are the real victims? Like, this is what I mean. It's like sheer arrogance. It's the way that a lot of people who want to defend Israel communicate about this stuff. That is how you fuck up 80 years of solid propaganda with billions of dollars in lobbying funds and hundreds of millions of dollars in direct economic aid to Israel in return for the multi-billion-dollar, very consistent and fairly successful propaganda apparatus. That's how you fuck it up. It's the sheer arrogance. That's what it is. Sorry, can you not accept that there are and have been victims in both sides? Brother, do you think that the Nazis were victims in the Holocaust too? Is that what you're doing? Is that the argument that you're going to present to me right now? Because you do realize that the Holocaust is not like a singular event, you know? What do you mean, both sides? What the fuck are you talking about, both sides? There's no both sides in the current genocide, the current Holocaust that Israel is engaging in. What is the both sides of that situation? Don't do this fucking bullshit victimhood, brother. Like, what are you talking about? What is this? There's no standard with you. You are the worst of humanity. What? Those words and all the other words you type don't tell me anything about genocide. They're pretty irrelevant to the discussion we're having. This video is proof that it's not a genocide. That's why you started rambling. Not trying to justify war here. I'm demonstrating how it's not a genocide. More than 19,000 rockets were launched at Israel since October 7. It's a very small and densely populated country. You don't fund genocide. Your country prevents one. Not apartheid. Palestinians, Christians, and Arabs, Druze, and plenty of non-Jews live in Israel. Oh, brother. It's just, I don't think you are capable of reading the room. That's the problem. And not just this room, but every room that you're in at this point. Okay? And this is kind of my point. The point I'm making is, brother, even if you want to defend Israel, you should just probably keep it quiet. Okay? Because you are genuinely participating in people developing this horrible tying their friends and the people that they know in the Western world of Jewish background to Israel, because you're doing that. Okay? That's true. 10,000, not this room, every room, every room. You don't understand. People fucking despise Israel. You don't understand it. You do not understand it. This shift happened for you so fast that like it's left you behind. You literally are arguing with points that you could potentially win people over with like 10 years ago. Okay? It's an entirely different environment now. I'm telling you, it's like if I ran around talking about ISIS and how good ISIS is and how it's true Islam, or why can't the Islamic Caliphate do a little bit of fucking conquest? Everyone else has done it. And as a Muslim, we all love ISIS, and that you guys are actually being Islamophobic when you criticize ISIS. Like, if I were to do that, that would be the equivalent of what you're doing right now. And of course, people's takeaway from that would be, oh my God, Muslims are fucking crazy. Do you not understand that? Now, the difference is no Muslim does that, and yet the State Department-backed propaganda apparatus consistently tried to make it seem as though Muslims fucking love ISIS, even though Muslims are the primary victims of ISIS. Most people would not dignify you with this response and try to talk to you like a human being at this point, okay? As a Jew that traveled abroad, I can tell you this negative sentiment towards Israel and Judaism conflated is not new since 1023. Oh. Yeah, I wonder why. Do you think Israel tied its actions and its conquest and its violence to Judaism after October 7? Do you think that this is a new phenomena? No, this is my point. My point is, Israel's been doing it to actual genuine success, especially in the United States of America, for a very long time. The Holocaust was a state-planned industrial genocide aimed at exterminating an entire people everywhere. The Nakba refers to a mass displacement during a regional war with multiple population movements happening as a result of that conflict. I said the new Holocaust, the current Holocaust, the one that was now paused for a little bit, even though it's not necessarily real. All that pause with a fake ceasefire. Okay? Yes. The Nakba is a planned out, systematized ethnic cleansing campaign. Okay? That's what the Nakba was. It's because they already hated Jews, Hassan. People hated Jews worldwide before Israel, Hassan. Oh my fucking Lord. You're literally... Oh. You need to understand something, okay? No one is denying that anti-Semitism was not a major vehicle throughout history, okay? I talk about the pogroms. I talk about the Holocaust with regular frequency. This has nothing to do with the Nakba, okay? Unless you think that the Arabs, Muslims and Christians alike, that lived in that area were simply frustrated because Jews were there now, and not because they correctly recognized that the British occupants that lied to the Arabs initially were actually, after the Balfour Declaration, creating a settler colony. And they were right, by the way. The Arabs were correct. They were creating a settler colony. That's precisely what happened. It wasn't Jew hatred at all. It was self-preservation. It was people fighting to make sure that they weren't slaughtered. It was people fighting to create a nation state for themselves. And prior to the British intervention, prior to British control in historic Palestine, British mandate Palestine, there were Jewish people living there, and they did not have these sorts of issues. There was no like consistent Jew hatred that was taking place under the Ottoman Empire, and I'm sure you know this already. Okay? Or maybe you don't, but the Ottoman Empire was considered a safe haven for Jews that were escaping numerous other pogroms throughout time, whether it be the Spanish Inquisition and numerous others. I need you to understand, okay? And I don't know if you ever will. Lied to Arabs and the Jews, lied to both, bro. First of all, there were Arab Jews as well, as you like to bring up when you're talking about your friends in Montreal. Okay, so it's not even like different. You don't even live in Israel and you're using like Israel demography. It's so funny. This is what I mean. It's like pure brain rot. Ugh. In any case, I don't think you're ever going to, I think you might be a little too deep. You might be a little too invested. And I doubt you're going to comprehend what's going on. But once again, yeah, the dhimmis in the Ottoman Empire, Jews pay taxes for being Jewish. Dog. In comparison to the Inquisition, just don't refer to me. Listen to Jewish historians, okay? Listen to Jewish historians. The Ottoman Empire, in comparison to the Western pogroms, the pogroms that were happening in the Western world, were far more tolerant to coexistence, okay? Yes. Jews and Christians paid a tax. This is not even a defense of the Ottoman Empire either. Like, I don't even give a shit about defending the Ottoman Empire. I'm just talking about history. Every non-Muslim paid a non-Muslim tax, and Muslims had a separate tax. But you do understand this, right? You do understand this, right? Like when you consistently try to like defend Israel and talk about, you know, an ongoing genocide in this way, when like even people who don't give a fuck about Muslims, right? Like Arabs, Muslims at all are recognizing this to be like a truly horrifying situation. Like, you are saying, this is my shit. This is me. I am a Jewish person living in Canada or living in America. I don't know where you live, right? And I love Israel, and I'm going to defend Israel, and I'm actually going to use anti-Semitism as a reason for why Israel must exist in the violent ways that it does. This teaches people the wrong lesson. It teaches people the opposite lesson that I'm trying to teach them, which is ironically exactly what I was trying to say here, which you did not understand. Okay? That is my point. You're contributing to it. Anyone that turns around and says Zionism, well, 90% of Jews are Zionist. Okay, 90% of Jews are Zionists. So if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Jew, does not realize that you're teaching people to be anti-Jew in that situation. You're not teaching them that like there is a difference in opinion between many different people. People go, okay, I'm anti-Israel. So if 90% of people are 90% of Jews are pro-Israel, then I guess I'm anti-Jew. That's it. Because a lot of Zionists do not understand that people do not fuck with Israel no more. It just doesn't make any fucking sense, especially to someone like myself, especially someone whose name is Hasan, especially someone who's like, a prominent left-wing critic of America in the Western world, who is of Muslim background. I just don't understand it. It's like running around and saying all Muslims love ISIS. That's what it feels like. And for the record, anti-Semitism would still exist. People would still tie Israel's actions to Judaism regardless. But you're not making it any fucking easier, especially when you argue with someone like myself. Oh my God. Haha, in comparison, bro, Jews paid for being Jewish. Okay, they were tolerant, but Jews are discriminated against. You painted it as it wasn't like that. And then I pointed out and you get exasperated. This has been my issue with you. No, reading comprehension is your major issue, and critical thinking is your major issue. On the one hand, there was ethnic cleansing taking place against Jews. On the other hand, Jews, just like Christians, were forced to pay a tax, okay, a non-Muslim tax. Take it up with people that chose to escape to the Ottoman Empire at the time, and not with me, okay? They made that choice, and I think it was the right choice to make. Yes, if he's talking about jizya, it was only for military agents and capable men only, not women, children, and the elderly. Around 1.5. Muslims pay 2.5 zakat. Can't believe we're still doing this Islamophobic talking point of the Big 2026. And the tax exempted them from joining the army. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Here, I mean, this article is a great one. I've talked about this already. What did the Ottoman Empire ever do for us? Quite a lot, in fact, by Diana Darke. Contrary to the prevailing view, the Turkish civilization had an egalitarian, multicultural outlook which protected Jews. It's ridiculous, dude. It's just so funny to try to argue on, you know, the Ottoman tax policies of me in an effort to try and fucking justify the Nakba somehow. Oh shit, dude, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you know, Jews and Christians alike paid a specific tax when they weren't serving in the Ottoman military. So I guess it's okay to fucking do the Nakba and then 80 years of like slow burn ethnic cleansing and mass displacement and land theft. Shit, I should have thought about that. Yes, Jews don't have to pay taxes for being Jewish anymore. Look at your chat trying to justify how Jews paying taxes for being Jewish. Isn't that bad, lol? Dog, it's not that bad in comparison to fucking genocide. That's the point that people are making, which I think you can understand, right? Or perhaps you can't. Take it up with the people who fled and sought refuge in the Ottoman Empire. We don't have to have this discussion right now, especially when you're trying to justify the fucking Nakba for this reason. Oh my God. Do you not understand how fucking stupid this argument is? Are you all right? Never justified the Nakba, only pointed out it went both ways. Jews were expelled as well during their Nakba. Oh my God! Yeah, why the fuck do the Palestinians have to be those who are ethnically cleansed for the European genocide of Jewish people? I know. That's a separate point, too. Anyway, yeah, you never justified the Nakba. You just said both sides suffered. Yeah, you know, poor Nazis suffered during the Holocaust too. Why do you not think about that? Poor Turks suffered during the Armenian genocide. Why does nobody ever think about that? It was just mass transfer. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was a little bit of ethnic displacement, right? That's what I would sound like if I were you, you know, doing the same kind of defense. And many people still do it to this day, as a matter of fact. Anyway, this isn't even one of the more consequential parts of this conversation, because like you won't even recognize that Israel's doing genocide to this day. So I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about at that point. Anyway, hopefully this was somewhat educational. Maybe one day. But this is not the right argument to make. And if you were in here, as a matter of fact, when I was talking about this initially with the Somali conversation, assuming that all Somalis are actually doing mass fraud is akin to assuming all Jews are doing international sex trafficking for Mossad and pedophilia, like because Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? That's a better argument, which is one that I presented when talking about the Islamophobia and comparing it to anti-Semitism. You are extensively trivializing the Holocaust to prove your point. Israel is a terrorist state. Okay. A terrorist state that's doing what? Doing genocide. Zionism is a fascist ideology. If you don't recognize these things, we can't have a normal conversation. I can explain it to you again over and over again, but Stop. Monkey do Houthi, shut the fuck up. Anyway. In case of Morocco, Israel paid Morocco to transfer Moroccan Jews. They didn't have enough population. Yes, in numerous other Arab countries in the MENA region, there are different reasons as to why. There are different ways in which this kind of population transfer took place. And it's not without like pogroms initially as well. There were some. But to compare separate countries, many of which were already under the protectorate, or not protectorate, as a matter of fact, whether to compare this to all these other countries in the MENA region, many of which were actually under the power and influence of a colonial superpower that was dominating them, is fucking insane. Whereas the precursor militant groups to the IDF, to before the Israeli state was established, the Zionist brigades, they actually carried out a planned ethnic cleansing campaign. It wasn't like Jews that did this planned ethnic cleansing campaign. These were militancies that specifically under the ideology of Zionism conducted a planned ethnic displacement and ethnic cleansing campaign. And they were successful. 750,000 Palestinians were removed from their homelands, never allowed to return. There's a difference between that and like the Israeli state that was established after the fact. One, really pushing and pulling in terms of like a lot of the instability that was taking place in the pan-Arabic nationalist movements that were fomenting in the region, in the MENA region, / going to, in certain instances, places like Vichy, France, to demand that their colonial occupants dispose of all the Jews and send them to Israel. This asymmetry has always played itself out because Israel is seen as a profoundly important Western apparatus. And that's why they've been armed to the fucking teeth. Initially from even the USSR, as a matter of fact, by way of Czechoslovakia. That was a major L from Stalin. In any case, did he say Hamas attempted genocide on October 7th? That's so funny. Yeah, so you're right. The Jewish partisans attempted genocide during the Holocaust. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was attempted genocide against the Germans and the Polish. It's just like anyone that was taking up arms alongside Nazi Germany was in fear of being genocided. Do you think Israel being horrible while tying itself to Judaism will make some people retcon their beliefs on everything surrounding World War II, and that conversation being popularized could swing people to be more sympathetic to actual Nazis and thus then be used to genocide, or just then be used to justify growing fascism today? Abso-fucking-lutely. That is exactly what's happening right now in broad daylight, in real time. It's exactly what I'm trying to fucking avoid. It's exactly what I'm trying to fight back against. And yet you still have people like Harley coming in here and trying to claim that I'm anti-Semitic, not realizing that right now anti-Semitism is unironically seen as a marker of earnesty, and you are so fucking far removed from the attitudes and how much they've shifted that you think that this is a successful strategy. Okay, people think you're a real one when you actually are anti-Semitic. It's fucking insane. It didn't happen overnight. Israel played a major role in it, though. There was already a lot of anti-Semitism flinging around. And yet, even to this day, for the record, like, anti-Semitism is a real bigotry. It's real hatred. But it doesn't have the same impact, the systematic discrimination that it once did in the United States of America. But it doesn't have the contemporary systematic discrimination that, like, anti-blackness and Islamophobia has, right? That's just true. Like, there was a time and place when, people wouldn't hire Jewish people. There was a time and place in the United States of America when Jews had a hard time getting into schools and whatnot, things of that nature, right? But in modern American society, anti-Semitism is not systematic, right? In the same way that like anti-blackness is. Okay? Having said that, however, that could change in the future. And that was certainly the case in the past. What is this? This gets 18K likes on Twitter on the regular. I don't see them under these tweets. I know. That's the other thing. You got Nazis who are fucking popping off, and you're coming to attack the one guy who is anti-Nazi. Okay? You're a fucking idiot. Actually, like, you are genuinely fucking stupid. If you sincerely think you're fighting anti-Semitism, which I don't think you are, I think you just want to like defend Israel somehow, and no one gives a fuck about what you have to say elsewhere. And this is the one community where people are not going to immediately like, shut up, Jew or something. So that's why you're in here trying to fucking chirp, because you know this is not an anti-Semitic community. It's an anti-Israel community. Okay? But if you want to fucking actually tackle anti-Semitism, why don't you go after real anti-Semites? The fuck are you doing in here? It's so stupid. It's the same thing that fucking Ethan Klein has been doing for the past 2 years, like a dumbass, not realizing that the environment has shifted so dramatically that consistently chirping about anti-Semitism, especially against people who are objectively not anti-Semitic, who have spent a good deal of their professional media career fighting against anti-Semitism, consistently claiming that they're anti-Semitic, when actual anti-Semites are fucking going around town gaining tremendous prominence, shows me that you're not a sincere person at all. You're a fucking idiot. You're wasting your time. Anyway, let's get back to Benjamin Netanyahu speaking at this synagogue to loud cheers.
Netanyahu, as